The frontier world of Aurelia, 7 circled a quiet blue-white star, its amber plains stretching unbroken beneath twin moons that glowed like silver coins. Only a handful of seasons had passed since the first settlers broke ground, their domed habitats and slender spires glittering like scattered jewels across the darkened steppe. It was a colony born of ambition and restless hope, a place where the Galactic Union's reach was felt more as a distant echo than a guiding hand. Dr. Sarah Keelan stood alone within the great observatory dome, its crystal walls opening to a sky awash with unfamiliar constellations. Her consoles pulsed with the soft light of data streams, the slow heartbeat of the cosmos translated into elegant arcs of mathematics. She had spent her career chasing faint signals in the dark, but tonight something unusual shivered across the sensors, a sequence of pulses too precise to be natural. Quantum entanglement signatures, clear and deliberate, flared and faded like the blink of an unseen eye. A hiss of the door broke the silence. Commander Elric Dane strode inside, the rugged ease of a man long accustomed to frontier dangers in every step. Dust from the evening winds clung to his uniform. "Please tell me the sky isn't falling again," he said with a crooked grin. Sarah barely looked up from the shimmering readout. "Not falling. Calling." She angled the hollow projection toward him, where the pulses formed a steady rhythm of light. Quantum entanglement signal. No Union array within 100 light-years could have generated this. Elric's brow lifted. "Then either we've got an unregistered neighbor, or someone wants to be found." Before she could reply, the pulses quickened, a sudden flurry like a heartbeat racing toward panic. Then, just as abruptly, the signal vanished. The dome fell silent except for the faint hum of the life support vents. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. At dusk, the colony's main forum swarmed with restless energy. Children darted between cargo crates while engineers secured scaffolding along the unfinished habitat ring. The familiar murmur of construction was broken by a low vibration that trembled through the ground. Heads turned skyward as one. High above, the orbiting defense satellites flared crimson, warning lights sweeping across the square. Sirens wailed. A metallic voice crackled through the public address system. "Security notice. Long-range anomaly detected. All personnel maintain positions." Governor Malek Ren convened the council before night fully claimed the plains. In the circular chamber of glass and steel, the colony's leaders gathered around a holotable whose soft glow cast their faces in uneasy light. Malek's weathered features betrayed no fear, only the steady patience of a man who had steered fragile settlements through more than one crisis. "Report," he said. Elric projected the recorded sequence above the table. "Quantum pulses, unknown origin. Not Union. Not Sarthi. Whoever sent it knows our entanglement protocols." Sarah's voice was low but certain. It wasn't random. The sequence carried coordinates, ours. A ripple of unease passed through the counselors. "Perhaps the Sarthi," Counselor Vera ventured, her tone edged with suspicion. "Testing our response?" Malek shook his head. "The Sarthi harvest worlds. They don't waste effort on riddles. Could this be a distress call?" "If it is," Sarah said, "it's one that demands an answer, or something else will answer first." Engineer Holden crossed his arms. "We're barely defended. If we respond, we announce our weakness. If we ignore it," Vera countered, "and someone truly needs help, we condemn them." Elric met their eyes, his voice steady. "Someone out there already knows we exist. Pretending otherwise only keeps us blind. Silence stretched, heavy and uneasy. Even the soft hiss of the air recyclers seemed to hesitate. Malek finally exhaled, shoulders settling as if under invisible weight. All in favor of answering? Hands rose, slowly, reluctantly. The decision was made. Then we answer, Malek said. On our terms. Commander Dane, prepare the quantum beacon. Limited handshake, full encryption. If someone is listening, let's hear what they have to say. Within the towering lattice of the entanglement array, coils of translucent crystal glowed with a cold blue fire. Sarah stood beside Elric at the activation console, the hum of gathered energy prickling the air. Once we transmit, she said quietly, there's no taking it back. Frontier life was never about safety, Elric replied. He pressed his palm to the control plate. The array awakened with a rising chime. Threads of light arced like frozen lightning, and a surge of invisible force rippled outward, racing toward the unseen depths of space. Far above the colony domes, the velvet sky shivered. For an instant, the stars themselves seemed to bend, like a curtain caught in an invisible wind. A single white point flared where none had been before. The first warning came as a tremor across the colony's sensor grid, a subtle ripple in the quiet rhythm of Nemesis orbit. Dr. Celine Kale, Chief Science Officer and Guardian of the planet's fragile future, leaned over the console as data poured in, a sudden distortion at the system's edge. Her heart tightened. Unknown signatures flared across the holographic map, cold and sharp like claws dragging across glass. They were not Union vessels. Energy readings betrayed a predator's intent. Multiple ships emerged from the darkness, their drives leaving afterimages of distorted space. Their configuration was unfamiliar yet ominously efficient. Celine's assistant confirmed the impossible. The power signatures matched those of the Korthari, a species whispered of in the darkest corners of Union archives, known for ruthless harvesting of life and genetic plunder. Worlds that faced the Korthari seldom remained habitable, and their victims were seldom found alive. Celine activated the emergency channel, her voice carrying a tremor she fought to suppress. The command center flooded with urgency. Commander Yarrick Soul, once a decorated officer of the Union frontier fleets and now the reluctant protector of this quiet world, appeared on the tactical display. He had sought exile here, far from the endless border conflicts of his past. Yet the past had found him. The colony's defenses were meager, 3 orbital platforms and a small wing of interceptors meant to deter pirates, not repel an armada. Yarrick issued crisp orders, civilian shelters to be sealed, non-essential personnel directed underground within 30 minutes. Above them, the sky burned with the first streaks of descending Korthari craft, black silhouettes cutting through the planet's pale atmosphere. The initial barrage shattered the night. One orbital platform flared into a sphere of molten debris, its death throes casting brief daylight across the oceans. Another shuddered under relentless fire, shields collapsing like fragile glass. No demand for surrender came, no message of intent, only the silent certainty of annihilation. Celine stood beside Yarrick as the command center's walls trembled with distant impacts. The technicians worked in fevered silence, the air charged with the weight of impending loss. Reinforcements from the Union would take 4 days at best. Nemesis would not survive 4 hours. The colony's emergency distress signal pulsed into the void, a desperate plea traveling at light speed toward an indifferent galaxy. But Celine knew light was too slow. She met Yarrick's gaze, her golden eyes reflecting the cold shimmer of the tactical display. There remained one forbidden option. The quantum beacon rested beneath a locked panel, a relic of an older era, its crystal core pulsing with a faint inner glow. Union law forbade its use except in the most dire of circumstances. The energy signature it emitted was unmistakable, capable of drawing attention from powers far beyond the Union itself. But the colony was dying, and no law written among the stars could outweigh the need to save it. Yarok hesitated only a breath before nodding. Celine placed her palm against the crystalline surface. The device awoke with a soft hum, light coalescing into a deep, azure blaze. Her voice carried across an infinite gulf. This is Dr. Celine Kale of the Aryan colony on Nemesis. We are under attack by Korthari forces. Orbital defenses are failing. Civilian population faces imminent destruction. This is a quantum beacon emergency transmission. To any who can hear, we beg for aid. The crystal flared once, sending a signal that leapt beyond the boundaries of light itself. Instantaneous, unbound by the limits of distance. It vanished into the silence of space like a heartbeat in the dark. Far across the galaxy, in the luminous heart of the Galactic Union, the great assembly chamber fell into sudden stillness as the message arrived. Representatives of 100 worlds turned toward the suspended hologram, the words of Celine Kale echoing across vaulted walls of silver and crystal. Fear flickered in every gaze. The name Korthari carried the weight of ancient nightmares. Ambassador Lyra Ven of the luminous Erythian species rose first, her voice like the resonance of wind through glass. We must send aid at once. The Korthari have broken every accord we hold sacred. Across the chamber, General Korvok of the militant Varn growled his dissent. The nearest fleet is 4 days distant. By the time we arrive, the colony will be ash and bones. We would risk lives for nothing. The chamber erupted in a storm of voices, pleas for action, arguments for caution, the old wounds of species and politics flaring like ancient scars. Amid the chaos, High Admiral Thane rose, his presence alone stilling the discord. I have dispatched a rapid response team, he announced, his voice iron over the storm. But even at maximum velocity, they will not arrive in time to save the colony. We must accept that reality. On Nemesis, the second orbital platform died in a burst of white flame. The third groaned under the weight of fire. The Korthari descended like a storm. And beneath the trembling sky, a forbidden signal raced through the void, carrying with it the desperate hope that someone, anyone, would hear. Night settled over Nemesis like a shroud of molten violet, the twin moons hanging low and heavy as if the sky itself shared the colony's dread. Fires from the ruined orbital platforms burned as streaks of pale red across the upper atmosphere, their fading trails like the scars of a wounded planet. In the main command center, the walls trembled with each distant impact. Dust sifted down in slow drifts, catching the harsh light of warning beacons. Dr. Celine Kale worked with quiet intensity at the central console, the blue glow of holomaps painting her features in cold fire. Her every movement carried the precision of a woman who had lived too long with the certainty that mathematics could mean survival. Across from her, Commander Yarok's soul moved like a man returning to a familiar nightmare. He had fled the endless border wars of the Union for this quiet frontier, believing himself beyond the reach of such darkness. But the darkness had followed, patient and inevitable. The Korthari fleet held formation at the edges of Nemesis gravity well, sleek black vessels shaped like the folded wings of some ancient predator. Their drives burned no visible flame, only the faint distortion of warped space. Every few minutes a thin lance of energy arced toward the colony's final orbital platform, probing its faltering shields. They were not rushing the kill. They were toying with their prey. Governor Malek Ren entered, his usual composure strained. His voice, when it came, was low enough to be almost lost beneath the hum of failing generators. The evacuation shelters are sealed. But we can only sustain life support for 72 hours. Less if the Korthari disrupt the atmospheric processors. Celine glanced toward him. The quantum beacon is active. If anyone heard. They will not arrive in time, Yarrick finished, his tone hard but not unkind. The nearest Union fleet needs days. We have hours. Malek exhaled, the sound a weary sigh. Then our hope lies elsewhere. If the beacon draws anything at all, something beyond the Union, it may be our only chance. No one voiced the fear that lingered unspoken, that the beacon might draw something worse. Outside, the colony stirred in uneasy silence. Families huddled in underground chambers whose walls were lined with the faint shimmer of emergency force fields. The air smelled of metal and ozone. Children clutched silent toys while their parents whispered prayers from 100 different worlds, their languages blending into a low, desperate hum. The planet itself seemed to wait, breath held beneath the weight of approaching ruin. In the sky, the Korthari began their descent. The first landers pierced the atmosphere like dark meteors trailing sickly green contrails. They struck the plains beyond the colony with seismic force, hurling shockwaves that rippled across the golden grasslands. Each craft unfolded upon landing, black petals revealing ranks of soldiers whose armor caught the moonlight in a sheen of cold obsidian. They moved with terrifying precision, a tide of silent figures advancing toward the distant lights of human habitation. Yarrick stood at the forward defense post as the first alarms wailed through the command network. The defensive turrets, little more than converted mining lasers, fired thin spears of light that flared harmlessly against the soldiers' kinetic shields. The Korthari kept walking. No return fire, no audible signal. Only the relentless march of inevitability. Celine watched from the upper deck of the command center, heart pounding with each tremor from the advancing horde. The numbers on her screens told a story of perfect control. The Korthari were holding back, testing. Their movements formed patterns, geometric arcs and spirals, that spoke of an intelligence far older and colder than her own. They were not simply invaders. They were scientists at an experiment whose outcome they already knew. In the council chamber below, arguments flared like sparks from dry tinder. Some demanded immediate surrender, convinced that yielding might spare at least some lives. Others called for a last defiant strike, though their weapons were scarcely more than an insult against such power. Malek raised a weary hand for silence. "We will not surrender while even one chance remains," he said, his voice carrying the quiet gravity of command. "But we will not throw lives away in reckless fury." Celine descended from the observation deck, her eyes alight with a sudden, dangerous idea. "There may be another way," she said, and the room stilled. "The Korthari are harvesting energy, genetic, environmental. But their landing patterns, they are drawn toward the resonance field of our quantum core. If we amplify it, if we overload the field, they might mistake the surge for an unstable weapon. They might hesitate." "A bluff," Yarrick said, the faintest flicker of interest sharpening his tone. "A signal," Celine corrected. "Something they will not ignore." Governor Malek's gaze settled on her. "And if you miscalculate?" Then the core destabilizes. The planet's crust could fracture. We would die before the Korthari ever fire a shot. Silence again, heavy as the looming dark. At last, Yarok inclined his head. I've seen worse odds. And if we do nothing, we die anyway. Malek's jaw tightened. Do it. If the Korthari fear anything, let them fear that. Deep beneath the colony's central dome, the quantum core pulsed like the heart of some vast, unseen creature. Rings of crystalline lattice rotated in silent harmony, bathing the chamber in an otherworldly glow. Selene worked swiftly, her fingers dancing across the interface as she entered codes that Union law forbade any civilian to know. Yarok stood at her side, a silent sentinel against the chaos above. The core's resonance climbed, a low vibration that thrummed through the walls and into the bones of everyone who listened. Lights flickered. The air grew heavy, charged with a static that raised the hair on their arms. Selene's breath came sharp and shallow as the lattice spun faster. The crystal heart now a blazing sphere of blue-white fire. High above the colony, the Korthari army slowed. The marching lines faltered, their perfect formation rippling like a disturbed reflection. The black-armored soldiers turned their faceless helms toward the central dome, where the glow of the quantum core now shone like a miniature star. A hush fell across the plain, broken only by the low, ominous hum of the overcharged core. Selene lifted her eyes toward the display, watching as the Korthari ships in orbit shifted position. Their drives flared, not in attack, but in something that might have been caution. They see it, Yarok whispered. For the first time since the attack began, the Korthari paused. No weapon fire cut the air. No soldier advanced. The Predator had scented something it did not understand. In the silence that followed, the twin moons cast their cold light upon both hunter and hunted, and the people of Nemealis dared, just barely, to breathe again. The lull stretched across the plains like the held breath of an entire world. Even the wind seemed to falter, as if reluctant to stir the brittle grasses between the frozen lines of soldier and settler. From the command dome, Selene Kale felt the pulse of the overcharged quantum core thrumming through the soles of her boots, each vibration a reminder of how close the system lay to catastrophic release. The crystalline heart below them glowed ever brighter, a captured star threatening to consume its cage. Yarok's soul stood at the viewport, his eyes fixed on the silent army. The Korthari had stopped, an interruption so sudden it unnerved him more than their relentless advance. The black-armored figures stood in perfect stillness, their alien helms reflecting twin shards of moonlight. Above them the great warships drifted like dark moons of their own, their hulls limned by the faint silver of the planetary aurora. It was not mercy that stayed them, Yarok knew. It was calculation. Governor Malek Ren paced a tight circle at the center of the room, hands clasped behind his back, voice low but sharp. How long can you keep the core stable at this output? Selene didn't look up from her console. Minutes. Perhaps less. The lattice is straining at every harmonic. One misstep and the reaction will cascade beyond containment. And if we ease the field now? Malek pressed. They'll know it's a bluff, Yarok said, before Selene could answer. Predators smell weakness. Outside, the black tide of soldiers remained motionless. Only the distant hiss of cooling metal carried across the plain. Selene tightened the last sequence of safeguards, her fingers trembling despite her discipline. She had gambled the life of an entire colony on a single equation, and now the unknown minds that commanded the Korthari weighed her move. A sudden ripple of movement broke the stalemate. The foremost rank of soldiers parted in a perfectly symmetrical arc. From the gap emerged a figure unlike the rest. Taller, clad not in dull obsidian but in armor of liquid silver that caught every moonbeam in a slow, fluid shimmer. The being advanced alone, each step measured, deliberate. It carried no visible weapon, yet the air around it tightened with a gravity that set every nerve on edge. "Is it a commander?" Malek whispered. Celine's throat went dry. "Or something more." The figure stopped midway between the Korthari lines and the outer defense shield. Slowly, it raised a hand. The silver gauntlet caught the starlight and bent it into a brief halo. No sound carried across the distance, yet in the command dome a voice bloomed, low and resonant, not spoken but felt, vibrating through bone and blood. "You trespass on currents you do not comprehend." The words unfurled inside their minds, each syllable a pulse of alien cadence. Celine staggered under the force of it. Malek gripped the railing, as if the voice alone might sweep him away. Yarrick straightened, jaw tight. "We respond." Celine forced her thoughts into the open like a door against a storm. "You came without warning. You slaughter without cause. This is our world." The answer came like the echo of distant thunder. "This is no one's world. It is a node. You build upon it, unaware of the resonance beneath your feet." Malek found his own voice, rough but steady. "We will defend what we have built." The silver figure tilted its head, and for the first time an emotion, something like curiosity, seemed to ripple through the psychic link. "Defend? With a star bound in glass?" A faint vibration passed through the ground, as if the planet itself had shivered. Celine drew a breath, steadying her racing heart. "You threatened us." We answered. Silence followed, thick and ringing. Then the voice softened, a tone that carried neither menace nor pity. "Your beacon woke more than your union. It sang to those who listen beyond the drift of galaxies. We came to measure what stirs." Yarrick shot Celine a sharp glance. "They're not here for conquest," he murmured. "They're here because we called." Before anyone could reply, a new light flared across the sky, a sudden spear of brilliance rising from the far horizon, pure and white as the birth of a sun. It grew with impossible speed, a vertical river of radiance that split the night in two. The Korthari warships shifted uneasily, their dark silhouettes wobbling against the stark illumination. The silver figure turned its faceless helm toward the glow, and for the first time, Celine sensed a flicker of something she could only name as concern. The voice returned, quieter now, as if speaking more to itself than to them. "Another answers." The column of light bent, arcing toward the planet with the grace of a falling comet. As it drew closer, it resolved into a formation of shapes. Sleek vessels wrought from some material that seemed less metal than living luminescence. They descended without sound, their outlines refracting the starlight into a halo of shifting color. No engines flared, no drives burned. They simply were, and the air itself seemed to part to welcome them. Malek whispered what they all felt. "Not Union ships." Celine's pulse quickened, a mixture of terror and awe. Whatever these newcomers were, they defied every law of propulsion and gravity she understood. The silver commander remained unmoving, head tilted toward the luminous fleet as though listening to a song only it could hear. The first of the radiant vessels slowed above the plains, suspending itself in silence. A single beam of soft blue light spilled downward, touching the ground not far from the silver figure. From its step to being cloaked in light, its form indistinct yet unmistakably present, a silhouette of grace and authority that seemed carved from the essence of dawn itself. Where the Corthari were shadow, this arrival was dawnfire. The air trembled with a resonance older than fear. Celine felt the quantum core below her respond, its own glow shifting to a harmonious pulse that matched the rhythm of the descending light. Somewhere deep within, she knew, the beacon had been heard. But not only by those they feared. Two powers now faced each other across the silent plain, darkness and living light, while the fragile colony of Nemesis stood between them, caught in a balance that could tilt the fate of worlds. The plain lay washed in a strange twilight where the pale glow of the newcomers met the silvered darkness of the Corthari host. Above, the sky burned with the trailing fire of 100 auroras born from the luminous fleet. The grass itself seemed to drink the light, each blade tipped with a quiet shimmer as though the planet held its breath. From the center of the radiant vessel's beam, the figure of light advanced, its outline neither wholly solid nor entirely vapor. Where it passed, the air warmed with the scent of rain after drought. Every colonist who watched from the battered command dome felt the same unnameable certainty. Something far older than war had stepped into the night. The silver-armored Corthari commander turned its featureless helm toward the approaching presence. The psychic voice that had moments ago carried the weight of iron now sounded almost cautious. Helion. The word was not a name so much as a recognition. An ancient chord struck across time. The being of light replied without sound, and yet every mind caught the gentle tide of meaning. Corthari, your harvest ends here. A ripple moved through the black ranks of the Corthari army, a subtle tremor of hesitation. Their weapons, once held with mechanical precision, dipped fractionally as if the very will that bound them had weakened. Jarek's breath came sharp. They know each other, he murmured. Celine could only nod. The Helion presence, for so the name now settled in her thoughts, turned slightly toward the command dome. Its gaze, or whatever passed for it, brushed across her like the touch of sunlight through glass. You called. We heard. Governor Malek stepped forward as if compelled, his voice no more than a rasp. We sought help. We never imagined. No imagination could have summoned what already watches, the Helion replied, its thought as soft as wind across still water. Your signal is a cry across layers of space. We followed it, as we have followed others in ages past. The Corthari commander raised a silvered arm. For the first time the mental voice betrayed strain. This is not your concern, Helion. The node belongs to no one. And yet life grows here, came the calm answer. Life is always our concern. A low vibration shuddered through the ground, neither quake nor machinery, but the slow heartbeat of something vast. The black Corthari vessels above pivoted in uneasy formation. Their shadowed hulls flickered with half-formed weapon signatures. The Helion being lifted a hand of light. The quantum core beneath Celine's feet responded like an instrument tuned to a hidden melody. Its frantic pulse steadied, the lethal overcharge settling into a deep, resonant hum. Celine felt the pressure in her skull ease. The Helion turned its luminous face toward her. You need not burn your star to hold them back. A sudden roar split the air, the Corthari fleet igniting its engines in a unified surge. Streams of black fire lanced upward, a display of power meant as both warning and challenge. The commander's voice hammered through their minds. We will not yield to ancient phantoms. This harvest is sanctioned. The Helion's reply came like the stillness before a tidal wave. Then face what you awaken. Above the battlefield, The radiant fleet shifted. Panels of living light unfolded like the petals of an impossible flower. From each ship spilled a lattice of energy that braided itself into a single vast sphere encircling the planet's upper atmosphere. It was not weapon fire, no thunder of missiles or blaze of plasma, but a quiet, blinding geometry that stitched itself into the fabric of the night. The Korthari warships struck first, unleashing volleys of dark matter lances. Each spear of shadow met the lattice and dissolved into motes of harmless sparks. The sphere held, a silent bulwark of light. On the ground, the Korthari army advanced 3 steps, then halted as if against an invisible wall. Their weapons flared and died in their grasp. The Silver Commander's psychic voice sharpened with fury. "You overstep, Helion." The being of light lowered its raised hand. "We step where life calls." A brilliance cascaded from the Helion's form, a wave that swept the plain. Where it passed, the Korthari's sleek armor dulled, the black sheen paling to a brittle gray. The soldiers staggered, their psychic chorus faltering into discord. Selene clutched the railing, awed and terrified. This was not destruction. It was disarmament. The Helion's light did not burn. It unraveled the Korthari will to conquer, peeling away the engineered aggression like morning dissolving a nightmare. The Silver Commander staggered forward, every motion a struggle. Its voice came ragged, a creature confronting something it had not believed possible. "You cannot bind us." "We do not bind," the Helion answered, "we remind." For a long breath, the plain was silent except for the whisper of the auroras overhead. Then, one by one, the Korthari soldiers sank to one knee, weapons lowering until they touched the luminous grass. Their commander bowed its helm, the silver sheen dimming like the last glow of a dying star. The Helion turned once more toward the command dome. "Your world is safe, for now." The thought carried both promise and an unspoken warning, as if the true peril lay not in this night's conflict but in the greater storms yet unseen. The light-shaped figure began to withdraw toward the beam that had delivered it. Before its radiance faded, a final whisper brushed across Selene's mind, gentle and unshakable. "Guard what you have awakened. Others will hear." Then the Helion ascended, the column of blue light drawing it back into the waiting ship. The lattice of the protective sphere shimmered once, like a sigh of the heavens, before dissolving into the star-streaked dark. The Korthari ranks remained bowed and unmoving, the hush of their surrender carrying across the plains like the first exhale of a world reborn. Dawn crept across the battered colony like a hesitant promise, the first light of the twin suns spilling through a sky still streaked with fading auroras. Smoke rose in thin spirals from the ruins of the outer defenses, yet the air no longer smelled of ozone and terror. Instead there lingered a strange coolness, as though the night itself had been rinsed clean. Selene stepped out from the command dome and felt the planet breathe. The grass, crushed beneath the march of Korthari boots, already reached toward the new day, each blade tipped with dew that refracted the waning starlight into a trembling rainbow. Her boots brushed the damp soil, and for the first time in endless hours she heard the unbroken sound of wind across the plain. Yarrick joined her, his eyes hollow from sleepless vigilance. He carried no weapon now, only the silent weight of everything witnessed. "They're gone," he said, voice rough. "Not a single Korthari vessel remains on sensors. The last signatures vanished beyond the heliopause before sunrise." "They left their dead," Selene replied quietly. Beyond the ridge lay the still forms of those who had not survived the Helion's unmaking, bodies intact, but armor dulled to stone gray, weapons corroded to useless scrap. Yet there was no stench of decay, no violence in their passing. It was as though the light had simply unspooled them from the pattern of war. Governor Malak emerged behind them, his cloak pulled tight against the early chill. He said nothing for a long while, merely watched the empty sky where the Helian fleet had stood like a constellation reborn. Finally he whispered, "The Union will demand answers." "They'll demand a great many things," Yarrick muttered. "None of them we can give." The governor's gaze lingered on Selene. "The quantum core is stable again. Whatever resonance the Helian triggered, it rewrote the instability. Our engineers can barely read the data. It's like trying to decipher a star's heartbeat." Selene remembered the luminous presence turning toward her, the quiet voice within her thoughts. "Guard what you have awakened." A chill settled beneath her skin despite the growing warmth of dawn. "It wasn't just rescue," she said. "It was a message." A sudden chime from her wrist console interrupted them, long-range communications clearing at last through the interference. The Galactic Union crest bloomed in holographic light above her palm. Admiral Sorov's lined face appeared, eyes sharp with both relief and something harder. "Nemelis Colony, we have received fragments of your distress call and sensor recordings. We are en route, but our long-range scans show anomalies." He paused, measuring his words. "Confirm, what engaged the Korthari?" Malak exchanged a glance with Selene before speaking. "An unknown force. They called themselves the Helian." The Admiral's brow furrowed. "Helian." He repeated the word as if tasting a myth. "You will transmit all telemetry immediately. And Governor, until our arrival, you will maintain strict silence. Do you understand? The Council must evaluate this before any public disclosure." The image dissolved, leaving only the hush of the waking plane. Yarrick exhaled sharply. "The Union is frightened." "Perhaps they should be," Malak said, his voice barely above a murmur. Through the morning Selene moved among the colonists, listening to their mingled wonder and unease. Children pointed toward the empty heavens where blue light had vanished. Farmers walked fields where soil once scorched by weapon fire now sprouted tiny, luminous shoots, as if the planet itself had been touched by some quiet renewal. Gratitude wrestled with fear in every whispered conversation. By afternoon a sleek diplomatic corvette pierced the upper atmosphere, its silver hull bearing the Union sigil. It descended with deliberate grace, settling on the landing plateau where Helian light had once bathed the Earth. From the airlock emerged a delegation of Union envoys, Ambassador Lyra Quen at their head, her emerald robes a flicker of color against the pale dust. Soldiers in ceremonial armor followed, eyes sweeping the horizon with wary precision. Malak greeted them with the formal clasp of hands. "Ambassador, you arrived to find us alive, though not by our own strength." Her gaze shifted to the repaired command dome, then to the distant ridge where gray Korthari remains lay like shadows of a forgotten storm. "Our long-range feeds show only fragments," she said. "But those fragments defy everything we know. Tell me who saved you." Selene felt the weight of every colonist's attention as she stepped forward. They called themselves the Helian. Their ships formed a sphere of living light. The Korthari weapons failed as if struck by silence. And then, they simply left. The ambassador studied her face, searching for embellishment and finding none. "There are records," she said finally, voice low. "Ancient references from the Union's earliest days. A people who withdrew from our councils 5 centuries ago. Legends spoke of a science so far beyond ours that it bordered on the divine. She drew a slow breath. Most believed them long vanished. Yet here you stand, witnesses to their return. Evening fell, and the colony gathered in the central square where new fires burned to ward off the lingering chill. Ambassador Lyra spoke in careful tones to the assembled settlers, promising Union support, reconstruction aid, and a thorough investigation. But beneath every word hovered the same unspoken question: what did the Helion want? When the speeches ended and the stars climbed once more into their dark dominion, Selene walked alone to the ridge. The Korthari armor gleamed faintly in the starlight, brittle and inert. She touched a single gray plate and felt nothing. No threat, no echo of the psychic fury that had once filled the night. Above her, the heavens stretched unbroken and unknowable. Somewhere beyond sight, the Helion drifted in their hidden realm, watching, or perhaps waiting. Selene raised her eyes to the silent stars and felt the quiet pull of something vast. Not menace, but the gravity of a future no one could yet name. Night deepened across Nemesis, the twin suns now a memory of gold and crimson beyond the western horizon. In their place, the firmament blazed with 1,000 unfamiliar constellations, and the lingering auroral shimmer of the Helion's passage hung like the ghost of a vanished dawn. The colony's makeshift lights flickered below, tiny sparks of human will scattered across the darkened plain. Selene walked the perimeter paths alone, her thoughts as restless as the wind that carried the scent of rain from the northern seas. The Union envoys had retired to their temporary quarters, leaving the settlers to uneasy celebration. Yet beneath the laughter and the music of hastily strung instruments, she felt the tension of a story that had only begun. Yarrick found her near the silent watchtower, his face pale in starlight. "I can't sleep," he said simply, the words carrying the fatigue of one who has seen too much. "Nor can I," she admitted. They stood without speaking for a while, listening to the quiet breathing of the planet. Somewhere in the distance, a flock of luminous nightbirds wheeled over the dark sea, their wings painting faint silver arcs in the sky. Finally Yarrick broke the silence. "The Helion, do you think they'll return?" Selene's gaze drifted to the fading auroras. "They never truly left. Not in the way we understand departure. We were shown something, Yarrick. A warning, perhaps. Or a promise." He studied her profile, the wind teasing loose strands of her hair. "And if the Union seeks to control it? They will," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Power this profound cannot be left untouched." But it was not offered to them. From the far side of the settlement came a sudden flare of blue light, sharp, silent, gone in the space of a breath. Both turned sharply. "Another flare?" Yarrick asked, already moving. They reached the square where Ambassador Lyra Quen stood at the center of a startled ring of colonists. Hovering above her outstretched hand was a small sphere of translucent crystal, no larger than a clenched fist, glowing with an inner, shifting radiance. "It appeared," Lyra said, her voice steady though her eyes betrayed wonder, "from nothing. Simply formed in the air." Malek approached cautiously, the blue glow reflected in his weathered face. "Is it dangerous?" Selene stepped closer, sensing rather than hearing a faint hum, a vibration that resonated against her heartbeat. The sphere turned slowly in the air, as though considering each of them in turn. "It isn't a weapon," Selene said, though she could not have explained how she knew. "It's a message." As if in answer, the crystal brightened and released a soft cascade of light. Images unfolded, swirling galaxies, threads of luminous filaments connecting distant star clusters, then a single spiral arm marked by a pulse of golden fire. The vision contracted toward that golden point until a lone planet emerged, veiled in oceans of turquoise and white. Yarok drew in a sharp breath. "That isn't Nemesis." "No," Celine murmured. "It's somewhere else." The image deepened to show strange architecture rising from emerald plains, structures of seamless crystal and flowing metal, alive with energy. At the center of the vision, a tower of living light pulsed like a beating heart. Then the sphere dimmed, and a single tone rang through the square, pure, resonant, and hauntingly beautiful. Lyra exhaled, as though she had been holding her breath since the light began. "Coordinates," she said finally, her diplomat's voice faltering with awe. "They've given us a location." Malek turned to her sharply. "The Union will want this. They will send fleets." "And perhaps that is exactly what the Helion intend," Lyra replied, her expression unreadable. "But the meaning, whether invitation or challenge, remains unclear." Celine felt the same quiet certainty that had settled over her when the Helion first spoke in her mind. "It isn't a trap," she said. "It's a path. But not for armies." The sphere drifted toward her, hovering just above her palm. She felt the thrum of distant stars in its vibration, the whisper of a purpose too vast for simple words. Yarok looked to her, his eyes searching. "Celine, are you certain?" Her voice trembled, but not from fear. "I think it wants me to follow." The crystal flared once more, bathing the gathered crowd in a gentle radiance before settling, silent and weightless, into Celine's waiting hand. All around her, the night seemed to lean closer, the stars themselves listening for the choice that would shape the future. Dawn broke across Nemesis in a slow unfurling of rose and copper light, the planet's twin suns rising like molten crowns over the eastern sea. The settlement below lay hushed, its usual morning bustle muted to a low murmur as colonists gathered near the central square. All night they had spoken in whispers of the sphere's sudden appearance, of the vision it had revealed. An unknown world shimmering in turquoise and white, a tower of living light pulsing like a heartbeat in the dark. Celine stood apart from the cluster of awed faces, the crystal sphere resting weightless in her palms. Its glow had softened through the night into a quiet, inner pulse that seemed to echo the rhythm of her own heart. She had barely slept. Each time her eyes closed, the same images returned, that distant planet, the luminous tower, the sensation of being called. Not summoned by command, but invited, as if the Helion had whispered directly into the marrow of her bones. Yarok approached from behind, the crunch of gravel marking his careful steps. He carried 2 steaming cups of care root infusion, their faint herbal scent rising like morning fog. "You've been out here since before the suns came up," he said softly. "Everyone's waiting for you to speak." Celine accepted the cup, but did not drink. Her gaze remained fixed on the sphere. "I don't know what to tell them," she admitted. "Only that I feel drawn. As if this is something I was meant to see." Yarok studied the crystalline orb. "When it showed that world, did it speak to you again?" "Not in words. But there was a sense of recognition. Like I had been there before, though I know I haven't." She finally lifted the cup and let the warmth settle her trembling fingers. "It isn't just a place, Yarok. It's a purpose." Before he could answer, the heavy footfalls of armored boots approached. Commander Malek strode across the square, his scarred face set in grim resolve. Behind him came 2 Union envoys, their official cloaks catching the first light of dawn. Ambassador Lyra Quen's normally serene features were etched with tension. "The Council has already received our preliminary report," Lyra said without preamble. "They will demand custody of that artifact. A retrieval ship has been dispatched and is expected within 36 hours. Celine tightened her hold on the sphere. "They mean to take it?" "It is their mandate to secure any object of potential strategic value," Lyra replied carefully. "Especially one capable of projecting instantaneous images across the galaxy." Malek crossed his arms. "And they will not wait for us to debate philosophy. When the ship arrives, they will claim the sphere as Union property. If you resist, they will make it an issue of security law." Jarek's jaw tightened. "They will strip this planet the same way the Siraki tried, only with polite words and council seals." Lyra's eyes narrowed, but she did not argue. Instead she stepped closer, lowering her voice so only the three of them could hear. "Celine, I have served the Union for decades. I have never seen the Helion give a sign so direct. Whatever this is, it will not tolerate ownership. If the Council takes it, I fear they will smother what it offers beneath bureaucracy and fear." Celine looked down at the sphere, now faintly humming in her palms. The sound, a gentle vibration more felt than heard, seemed to swell when Lyra spoke. The sphere's glow deepened from blue to a richer violet, as though reacting to their conversation. Malek glanced at the shifting colors. "It's listening," he said in a low voice. "Or, responding." Before any of them could speak again, the sphere flared brilliantly, a sudden bloom of light that washed the square in shades of violet and silver. Colonists gasped, shielding their eyes. The ground trembled as a column of light projected upward, a translucent pillar reaching far into the pale morning sky. Within that pillar, images formed, clearer now than before. A star chart of the outer spiral arm unfolded in 3 dimensions, its constellations rendered in blazing points of light. Lines of luminous filaments threaded the stars, converging toward a single golden point far from Nemesis. The vision zoomed inward until a lone planet emerged once more, but this time the image lingered long enough for details to sharpen. Vast crystal plains reflected an oceanic sky. The living tower of light at the planet's heart pulsed like a great, slow heartbeat. Then a new pattern bloomed across the projection, a sequence of glyphs, flowing like a river of fire across the air. Celine felt their meaning, not as translation, but as direct understanding. "It's a map," she whispered. "And a time. The alignment of 3 suns, 2 cycles from now." Lyra caught her breath. 2 Nemesis cycles? That's less than a standard month. The pillar collapsed back into the sphere with a sound like the sigh of distant wind. The crystal settled into stillness once more, its violet light dimming to a steady pulse. Malek looked from the sphere to Celine, his voice heavy. "They want someone to come. And we know who," Jarek said quietly. Celine felt the truth settle over her like the weight of destiny. "It isn't a summons to the Union," she said. "It's an invitation. For me." A sudden roar overhead drew all eyes skyward. 3 Union interceptors streaked across the dawn, their silver hulls catching the early light. The retrieval ship would not be far behind. Lyra turned back, urgency in her luminous eyes. "If you mean to accept this invitation, you must leave before the Council's ship arrives. Once they have you under jurisdiction, they will never permit it." Malek stepped closer, his voice a low growl. "I can arrange a transport. Quietly. But you must decide now. The sphere warmed in Celine's hands, its pulse quickening like a second heartbeat. Around her the murmuring colonists waited, their faces lit by the pale suns and the afterimage of the Helian's vision. Celine looked to Yarok, to Lyra, to Malak, and finally back to the endless sweep of the morning sky. "If I go," she said, her voice steady though her heart raced, "it will be as a seeker, not as an envoy. This journey is not for politics or power." Yarok stepped forward, eyes dark with a mixture of fear and pride. "Then I'm going with you." Lyra touched Celine's arm, her expression both solemn and relieved. "Go quickly, before the council decides the meaning of your choice for you." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of the northern sea and the faint metallic tang of approaching engines. Above them, the distant shimmer of the retrieval ship began to catch the rising suns. The countdown had begun, and the Helian's path, bright, mysterious, uncharted, awaited. Twilight laid a burnished haze over the western sea as Celine's borrowed transport slipped from Nemilus atmosphere and into the hush of interstellar night. The small vessel, a long-range courier refitted for stealth, glided between the stars like a mote of silver dust. Its engines whispered, a muted thrum that matched the steady heartbeat of the Helian sphere resting in a padded cradle beside Celine's seat. Yarok sat opposite her, his face washed in the pale glow of navigational holos. "The Union channels are flooded with alerts," he said, keeping his voice low as though the vacuum itself might overhear. "They know you've left. They'll scramble ships to intercept once the retrieval craft finds the colony empty." Celine kept her gaze on the stars ahead, great slow rivers of fire twisting toward an invisible horizon. "They will search," she said, but the Helian mapped a course beyond the Union's reach. "We are following their path now." The courier slid into the first jump corridor, and starlight stretched into threads of molten glass. For a breathless instant, the universe blurred into a luminous river, then resolved into the dark expanse of a distant sector where no Union beacons burned. The sphere pulsed once, a soft violet flare that seemed to tug the ship gently toward a single faint star gleaming at the corridor's end. Hours passed in a rhythm of silence and whispered updates. Beyond the hull, nebulae unfurled like spilled ink across the void, their electric blues and scarlet wisps framing a darkness so deep it seemed to hum. Celine watched their ghostly light flicker across Jarek's features, tracing the quiet resolve in his eyes. A sudden chime broke the stillness. The sphere rose unbidden from its cradle, spinning slowly in midair. Its violet glow brightened to a living amethyst, and then to a white so pure it seemed to erase the boundaries of the cabin. Yarok shielded his eyes. Celine did not. The light washed over her like warm rain. Her vision filled with a new image, the planet from her earlier dream, now close enough that she could taste the thin crystal air. Jagged continents of translucent stone jutted from seas of mirrored turquoise. Above them, the great tower of living light spiraled into the stratosphere, each tier singing in tones too vast for human hearing. The sphere's hum deepened, not as sound but as resonance felt through bone and blood. When the vision faded, the ship's controls flickered to life with coordinates neither she nor Yarok had entered. The engines shifted without command, altering their course toward the golden star at the center of the Helian map. Yarok exhaled slowly. "We're not flying the ship anymore." "No," Celine whispered. "We are being flown." The final jump brought them into an empty quadrant, a velvet ocean of dark speckled with distant suns. There, like a moon made of black glass, an immense structure drifted, half seen until its edges caught a stray gleam of starlight. It was not a ship, not a station in any Union sense, but a colossal lattice of crystalline arcs, each as wide as a continent, curving in a pattern too intricate for the eye to follow. As the courier approached, a path of luminous filaments unfurled from the lattice, drawing them inward. Gravity softened. Time itself seemed to slow until their breathing matched the slow, tidal pulse of the Helian construct. The sphere floated forward, slipping through the viewport as if the hull were mere mist. Celine unbuckled and followed, her body guided by a weightless certainty. Yarek hesitated only a heartbeat before pushing after her. They drifted through an open archway of pure light. Inside lay a hall without walls, a cathedral of stars suspended in a pale argent glow. At its center hovered a single figure, neither fully human nor fully alien, a being of translucent form whose features shimmered between familiarity and mystery. Eyes like twin novas turned toward Celine, and when it spoke, its voice arrived as both sound and thought, an intimate resonance within her own mind. "You have heard our call," it said, each word a chord of layered harmonics. "And you have come." Celine's heart beat once, twice, then steadied. "Why me?" The figure tilted its head, light rippling like water across its shape. "Because you listened. Because your kind stands upon the threshold of change. The Union believes itself the measure of civilization, yet it cannot yet see the fractures forming in the fabric of the Real. We have watched. We have waited. But the moment for silence is passing." Behind the being, the hall transformed into a vast star map, more detailed than any Celine had seen. Veins of glowing filaments threaded through galaxies, each intersection pulsing with a faint red shimmer. She recognized the outer spiral arm, then the Union's core systems, and the widening whirl of distortions beyond. "These are the boundaries between worlds," the voice continued. "The barriers that separate your reality from others. They weaken. Already the edges fray. If they fail completely, what waits beyond will not be bound by your laws of matter or time." Jarek's breath caught. Then the legends, the dimensional incursions. Not legend. Imminent. The Helian's gaze held Celine's. "We revealed ourselves on Nemealis because the pattern has quickened. To face what approaches, the Union must awaken, must choose cooperation over fear. Yet their politics blind them. We cannot compel them. But we can prepare you." Celine felt the sphere settle once more into her palms, though she had not moved to take it. It was warm, alive, and in its depths she saw faint flickers of shapes, tools, symbols, knowledge beyond her comprehension. "What am I meant to do?" she asked. "Become the bridge," the being replied. "Carry what we give you back to your people. Teach them to see beyond the horizon of their own power. When the walls between realities thin, only those who understand the greater weave will endure." A hush fell over the hall, deeper than silence, a pause in the very fabric of space. Then the Helian reached forward, touching the sphere with a single luminous hand. Light cascaded outward in a slow-moving wave, enfolding Celine and Yarek. In that brilliance Celine felt the enormity of the cosmos, its dangers, its beauty, its fragile interconnections, press into her awareness. She was both infinitesimal and essential, a single note in a symphony older than stars. When the light faded, the hall stood empty save for them. The Helian being was gone, leaving only the quiet pulse of the sphere and the echo of its final words. Jarek's voice broke the stillness. "They've given you something. I can feel it." Celine held the sphere close. "Not just to me. To all of us. Outside, the colossal lattice began to shimmer, its arcs folding inward like petals at dusk. A deep vibration shuddered through the structure, and slowly, the courier ship eased away, guided once again by a force beyond its own engines. Through the viewport the stars wheeled, and far behind, the Helian sanctuary faded into the endless dark, neither gone nor wholly present, like a promise waiting for the right moment to return. The courier returned to the Union's charted space as dawn spread across the world they had left behind. Nemesis lay below like a jewel reborn, its oceans catching the first spill of sun. Selene stepped from the shuttle into the soft morning air and felt, for the first time since the Siraki assault, the quiet heartbeat of a planet at peace. The scent of salt and blooming skyflowers rode the breeze, mingling with the distant music of rebuilding, hammers, laughter, the murmur of lives resuming. Yarok walked beside her through streets no longer scarred by fire. Children darted between the growing towers of white composite, their bright voices ringing like bells. Above, new orbital sentries glittered, gifts of Helian design, each a silent promise that the colony would never again stand defenseless. Yet even as the settlement thrived, a deeper hush lingered at its core, as if every soul felt the weight of something vast and unseen. In the heart of the restored research complex, Selene placed the Helian sphere upon a dais of crystalline stone. Its soft violet glow bathed the chamber, and those gathered, Union envoys, Aryan engineers, ambassadors from half the known races, fell into instinctive silence. The sphere's pulse quickened, a rhythm that seemed to synchronize with every beating heart. It rose unbidden, turning slowly, and from its core, a lattice of light unfurled across the room, a living star map more intricate than any Union archive. Threads of silver fire stretched between galaxies. At each intersection a flare burned crimson, the mark of an unseen tension. Gasps rippled through the assembly as they recognized their own worlds, each point trembling on the edge of some greater storm. Selene's voice carried without effort, each word borne on the sphere's resonance. This is what the Helian wished us to know. The walls between realities are thinning. What approaches is not conquest in the sense we understand. It is the unraveling of the fabric that binds existence itself. And yet, she lifted her gaze, meeting the eyes of every species represented. They believe we can endure. Not through weapons or fear, but through unity of purpose, through knowledge shared and courage held in common. A quiet strength settled over the room. One by one, the delegates stepped forward until a great circle formed around the sphere. There were no formal treaties, no signatures, only a single wordless moment of agreement, as if the pulse of the Helian gift had written a covenant into their very breath. Beyond the windows, twilight deepened. The first stars ignited overhead, and in their light Selene felt the presence of the unseen watchers, neither absent nor domineering, but patient, awaiting the choices of those they had spared. The sphere brightened once, a final flare of amethyst fire that washed the hall in living dawn. Far across the galaxy, in a realm no Union ship had charted, the Helian Council stood beneath their own constellations. They watched the same stars and felt the same vibration of converging worlds. One elder broke the hush with a single thought that traveled like a tide across their gathering. The bridge has been set. On Nemesis, Selene turned to the sky. The universe stretched above her, terrifying in its scale, magnificent in its mystery, yet she no longer felt small. She felt woven into something vast and luminous, a symphony in which every note mattered. When the last ray of evening touched the sea, the sphere's glow settled into a gentle, enduring heartbeat. It did not fade. It waited. And in that waiting, the galaxy discovered a different kind of hope, that when the next great darkness came, it would not face it alone.